The sky was still painted with the soft grays of dawn when Asha Reynolds stepped out of her apartment. The morning air was brisk, and fog lingered in the distance like a curtain not yet drawn open. The city was only beginning to stir. Streetlights still flickered against the weakening dark, and birds chirped softly as if trying not to wake the sleeping world. As she walked toward her parking space in the hospital lot, coffee thermos in hand, Asha's mind was already on her patients. Then she saw it. Her silver Honda Civic stood where she'd left it the night before, but barely recognizable. Her breath caught. The front windshield was shattered in a tight web of cracks, each fracture like a vein pulsing with rage. Her tires had been slashed, puddles of rubber curling like dead leaves near the curb. One side mirror dangled from a wire, the other was just gone. The car looked like it had been jumped by a pack of wild animals, but that wasn't what made her fingers tremble. Taped to the driver's window, fluttering in the light breeze like a ghost, was a plain white envelope. She slowly peeled it off, careful not to smudge any fingerprints. Inside was a single piece of lined paper. No signature, no details. Just one sentence scrawled in bold, red permanent marker. Stay out of what doesn't concern you, or next time it's not your car. She blinked at the words, read them again. The blood in her veins felt like ice. It wasn't random. This was a message, a warning, a threat. But Asha Reynolds didn't panic. Not yet. She folded the note with deliberate care, like it was evidence because it was. She took a deep breath, scanning the lot, noting the dark SUV parked nearby. Wondering if whoever did this was still watching, she turned and walked back toward the hospital. Not to report it to hospital security, not to call the police. Not yet. She had someone else in mind. Asha Reynolds wasn't just a nurse. She was the lead trauma RN at St. Mary's Regional Hospital, one of the busiest and most respected emergency rooms in the tri-state area. She had 10 years of experience in high-pressure trauma response, had saved countless lives and trained over a dozen new nurses in her unit. She wasn't known for drama. She wasn't known for stepping outside protocol, but she was known for one thing, doing the right thing, even when it was hard. That's what had gotten her here. 2 months earlier, Asha had witnessed something during surgery that chilled her to her core. A senior surgeon, Dr. Stephen Grant, left a surgical sponge inside a patient's abdominal cavity. The resident had tried to say something. Asha had tried to mention it quietly. But Grant, arrogant and rushed, brushed them off and closed. Worse, the next day, the operative report had been falsified. Nothing about the missing sponge. The patient had to be rushed back into surgery 2 days later with severe infection. Asha knew what she saw. She also knew that reporting it could make her a target, but staying quiet wasn't an option. So she documented everything, filed an anonymous complaint to the hospital's compliance board, and waited for them to act. The board never followed up. Instead, subtle things began happening. Schedule changes, overtime removed, side eyes from doctors in the hallway. Then came the rumors that she was difficult, that she questioned authority, that she made mistakes. None of it true, but all of it pointed now. Her car was destroyed, and the message was loud and clear: stop or face consequences. But this wasn't the first time Asha had faced pressure, and she wasn't about to bow now. The hospital had long protected its star surgeons. Dr. Stephen Grant was one of them. On paper, he was decorated, published, respected. But behind the scenes, Asha had heard whispers for years. Botched procedures, swept under the rug, quiet settlements, nurses pressured into silence, residents blamed and shipped off to other hospitals. She hadn't wanted to believe it. Not until she saw it herself. Her report detailed everything: time, date, patient file, number, and the resident's testimony. But somehow Dr. Grant had found out. No one had said it directly, but Asha knew the look in his eyes that day in the break room. He had walked in, seen her, and smiled coldly. Some people should really mind their own business, he said aloud, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then he walked out. Days later, her tires were slashed. Now, the windshield note made it unmistakable. Someone was trying to silence her. She didn't scare easily, but she did believe in covering her tracks, and she knew she needed help. Instead of picking up her phone and dialing 911, Asha dialed a different number. Maya, it happened. Someone trashed my car, left a note. There was a pause on the other end, then a calm voice replied, I'm on my way. Don't talk to anyone. Maya Ellis was more than Asha's cousin. She was a federal investigator with the Department of Health and Human Services, specifically in the Office of Medical Ethics and Compliance. Her job was to investigate fraud, abuse, and misconduct in healthcare systems. She'd been building cases against corrupt hospital chains for over a decade. Maya didn't play games, and she had heard of Dr. Grant before. Her office had flagged his name 3 times in the last 5 years, but every time, the trail went cold. I knew he was dirty, Maya said as she pulled up outside Usha's building an hour later. She wore plain clothes, her badge tucked out of sight. But now we can prove it. Together, they inspected the car. Maya took photos, collected the note with gloves, and called in a contact from forensic services. This isn't just vandalism. This is intimidation of a whistleblower, a federal crime. Asha nodded, feeling the weight of it settle in her chest. Not fear, but purpose. The next day, Maya entered St. Mary's Hospital under the guise of a routine compliance audit. Hospitals were used to these. They happened quarterly and often led to minor paperwork corrections. But this time, the audit was a cover. Maya carried 2 miniature audio recorders installed discreetly in staff break rooms. She planted a camera disguised as a smoke detector outside the surgical ward. She even slipped a mic into the badge clip of Usha's uniform, small enough to avoid detection, sensitive enough to record whispered threats. Then they waited. The plan was simple: document everything. Catch Grant saying something incriminating. Let him dig his own grave. Maya knew from experience that predators often couldn't help themselves. They believed they were invincible, and Dr. Grant was no different. 3 days later, he walked into the stairwell at shift change and found Asha standing alone. He smiled, too wide. "You think you're untouchable. I know what you did. You're not as smart as you think." He took a step closer. "I can make you disappear." Every word was recorded. Maya listened to the audio later that night, her expression unreadable. Then she looked at Asha and said just 3 words. The fluorescent lights in the staff hallway flickered faintly overhead as Asha placed her chart down and noticed a folded piece of paper tucked beneath it. No envelope, no hospital logo, just her name, written in jagged, rushed strokes. Inside were 5 words: stairwell, 5 minutes. Alone, no signature. But she knew exactly who it was from. Asha paused only briefly, then turned, walking calmly toward the back stairwell of the hospital's east wing. The space was dimly lit and rarely used now, since the new elevators had been installed. Cameras didn't reach here. She'd already confirmed that with Maya. She opened the door and stepped inside. Dr. Stephen Grant stood on the 3rd-floor landing, arms crossed, his white coat folded over one shoulder. His expression was a perfect blend of arrogance and contempt. "I didn't think you'd show," he said, his voice smooth, almost amused. "I don't run from cowards," Asha replied. Grant smirked and descended 1 step, then another. "You think this little charade of yours scares me?" A nurse reporting a top surgeon. "They'll laugh you out of this building. You're worried. That's why you called me here." He moved closer into her space, close enough that she could smell the bitterness of his morning coffee and cheap. "Aftershave, I'm giving you 1 chance to walk away. Forget everything. Retract the complaint. And I'll make sure no one sees your file." Her pulse quickened. "What file?" His grin widened. "Your brother, Marcus. Juvenile arrest. Assault. Charge, sealed, record. But I know people, and people love a scandal." The hallway fell silent. Even the hum of the old HVAC system seemed to pause. Asha didn't blink. Her badge mic recorded every syllable. "You're threatening me now?" she asked. "No, sweetheart," he said, leaning even closer. "I'm offering you mercy." She took a breath, slow and steady. "You just buried yourself." Grant blinked. Then she walked past him without another word. By the time Asha reached the staff lounge, Maya was already there, sipping stale coffee from a vending machine cup and staring at her phone. "He took the bait," Asha whispered. Maya looked up. "Good, let's close this." That night, they prepared a setup meticulously far from the hospital, far from security guards that might warn Grant. A vacant lot behind a closed-down hardware store became the perfect trap. It had 1 entrance, no streetlights, and only 1 way in or out. Asha would show up first. Wired under her sweater, she had both audio and GPS tracking devices live. Maya and her DOJ agents would be parked 2 buildings away, listening in. Before Asha left, Maya clasped her shoulder. "He's desperate. Desperate people do dumb things. Be ready." "I am," Asha said. At 10:47 p.m., the lot was silent, except for a few stray dogs rustling trash. Asha stood near the edge, heart racing, but her face was calm. 10 minutes later, headlights emerged from the far end of the alley. Dr. Grant's sedan rolled to a stop. He stepped out slowly, wearing jeans and a dark hoodie. No doctor coat, no smug grin, just cold calculation in his eyes. "You made the right choice," he said. "This doesn't need to go further." Asha stared at him. "You came here to silence me. You need to let it go. This will ruin both of us. But mostly, you—" He stepped forward, lowering his voice. "You retract the complaint, say you were mistaken, and I don't make your brother's life hell." She turned slightly, angling her body toward the listening van. And if I don't? He smirked. Then, I ruin you. Career, reputation. I'll make sure no hospital touches your name again. From inside the van, Maya clicked the signal. Agents burst from the shadows, but what Grant didn't know was this was not the only meeting planned 2 nights before the parking lot setup. Maya had arranged a second trap just in case he didn't. Show or smelled a setup. A backup location, the abandoned west wing of St. Mary's Hospital, closed off after a fire 2 years ago. A broken sign still read surgical recovery above rusted double doors. Inside, hidden cameras were planted. In an old exit sign, a defunct light switch, and a vent. One microphone had been drilled beneath a desk. The space looked untouched, but it was now wired tighter than any interrogation room. The plan was simple. If Grant suggested a more private location, Asha would offer this space as neutral ground. She'd tell him no one goes there anymore, but Grant went with the parking lot plan. Still, the abandoned wing was secured as evidence. It became proof of premeditation. That he was planning to meet her secretly, away from surveillance, away from help. Intent mattered, and Maya knew that when this went to trial, intent would be everything. When Grant saw the agents close in on him in the parking lot, his body tensed, but he didn't run. He simply rolled his eyes. "You've got to be kidding me." One of the agents barked. "Hands where we can see them." "I'm a surgeon," Grant protested. "I save lives." Maya appeared beside the SUV holding up her credentials. "Stephen Grant. You are under arrest for obstruction of a federal whistleblower investigation, criminal intimidation, destruction of property, and coercion of a licensed healthcare worker." Grant stared at her, stunned. This was a setup. "No," Maya said coldly. "This was accountability." He looked past her at Asha, still standing in the glow of the SUV's headlights. "You set me up." Asha didn't move. "You set yourself up the moment you picked the wrong nurse." He was cuffed and placed into the vehicle. His mugshot would hit the press by morning. 2 hours later. The agents swarmed St. Mary's Hospital with a sealed federal warrant. They seized records, pulled surgery files, interviewed nurses. One resident cried on the spot when shown footage of Grant threatening Asha. Another confessed to being pressured into silence during a similar incident 3 months ago in Grant's locker. They found a burner phone. On it, texts to an unknown number referencing the nurse, the file, and cleaning it up. They also found a printed copy of Marcus Reynolds' sealed juvenile record, illegal to possess, let alone use. It was more than enough. By dawn, news outlets had the story. Federal agents arrest prominent surgeon in whistleblower case. Social media exploded, and inside the hospital a quiet shift began. Nurses who had once looked away now nodded at Asha with respect. Doctors who stayed silent found their words. One even apologized. The board issued a press release promising a full investigation and cooperation with federal authorities. But Asha knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Now, the real healing could start. The courtroom was packed on the morning of Dr. Stephen Grant's arraignment. Every bench was filled. Reporters stood shoulder to shoulder in the back, cameras flashing through the door glass. St. Mary's staff sat on both sides, some whispering nervously, others stone-faced. This was no ordinary hearing. This was reckoning. Asha Reynolds sat near the front beside Maya and 2 DOJ agents. She wore a simple blazer and her hospital badge around her neck, a quiet symbol of who she really was: a nurse, a fighter, a witness. When Dr. Grant entered, he looked like a shadow of himself. No white coat, no arrogance, just a cheap blue suit and the slow shuffle of a man whose entire illusion had collapsed. He avoided Asha's gaze. The prosecutor began with force. "This is not a case of workplace conflict. This is about intimidation, manipulation, and the abuse of institutional power." Then they played the audio, every word from the stairwell, every threat in the parking lot. The jury listened in stunned silence, and then Asha took the stand. She described the fear, the courage. The moment she decided enough was enough, she didn't cry. She didn't waver. She ended with a quote from her mother. "Justice isn't something you wait for. It's something you show up and make." And in that room, she made it. Marcus Reynolds hadn't spoken publicly in years. A private man with a quiet life, he worked as a mechanic and kept to himself. But when his sealed juvenile record was illegally used to threaten his sister, something changed. He showed up outside the courthouse after the second day of testimony. Standing at the podium flanked by Maya and Asha, he addressed the crowd. "I made a mistake when I was a kid, but I paid for it. I changed, and the law said that record was sealed. This man tried to use that to silence my sister, and for what? Doing the right thing?" He paused, voice shaking but steady. You don't get to drag people's pasts out like weapons, especially not when they're trying to protect others. The press loved him. But more than that, the people respected him. In a city tired of cover-ups and corruption, Marcus became a symbol, not of past mistakes, but of progress. Following Grant's arrest and trial, St. Mary's Hospital faced an avalanche of scrutiny. Nurses began filing reports. An anonymous tip line was launched. 3 department heads quietly resigned. The board knew it couldn't be business as usual. Within weeks, they appointed a new chief compliance officer, and her name was Asha Reynolds. At first, she declined. She didn't want politics. But Maya reminded her, if you want lasting change, you have to lead it. So she accepted on her terms. She created a safe reporting initiative for hospital staff, partnered with civil rights groups, and enforced mandatory ethics training for all physicians. Within 3 months, disciplinary actions had doubled, and so had staff satisfaction. Asha didn't just return to the hospital. She rebuilt it from the inside out. The day of sentencing arrived with cold rain drumming the courthouse windows. Grant sat hunched, hands clasped, his attorney whispering to him. The judge, a woman who had once been a trauma surgeon herself, addressed him directly. Dr. Grant, your skills in the operating room saved lives, but your actions outside, it endangered them. This court cannot allow your position, your race, or your rank to excuse the systemic harm you caused. She sentenced him to 22 years, 18 for coercion, for 4 evidence tampering and unauthorized access to sealed records. No parole. Grant didn't look at Asha, but she looked at him. Not with vengeance, not with triumph, just with finality. Justice had been spoken. Months later, on a sunny morning outside the hospital, Asha stood with a clipboard in hand and a line of new nurses behind her. It was orientation day. She smiled as she spoke. This isn't just a job, it's a calling, and here your voice matters. As she walked the halls, patients waved. Doctors nodded. But more importantly, young nurses followed her with confidence in their stride. She paused briefly by the old east stairwell, now closed, and soon to be replaced by a memorial garden dedicated to healthcare whistleblowers, and with a final breath she walked on. Not just a nurse, not just a survivor, a symbol. Asha Reynolds had faced fear and refused to flinch. Now she was the one people looked to when they needed strength, and she would never walk alone again.